Three, two, one. Welcome to Hybrid Theory. I'm Aurian Archive. No music this morning, much because I'm just not in the mood. Alright, over the past couple of Carnage series videos, uh, I've outlined some of the mistakes that I made and some of the future planning that was going into dealing with failing hardware, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And to recap in the videos, I really wanted to hang on to the i7-920 engineering sample that Intel sent me. And there's a lot of reasons I why it's not a good platform to hold on to. It's first of all, the platform that it's on only has USB 2.0. The motherboard that I have was never the greatest motherboard for that series of processors. Uh, Over a previous video, I finally realized, put two and two together, and I realized why triple channel memory was never working on my system except once when I was using leftover memory. Uh, that came down to a difference between the engineering sample spec sheet and the published ARC retail specification, uh, in which the retail version is listed as having a cap of 24 gigabytes triple channel memory. The engineering sample or specific versions of the i7-920 has a cap of only 12 gigabytes triple channel memory, 4 gigs per channel. And that is down to the limited addressing bus, and I want to say it was 36-bit. So I've kind of been talking over this with some people in the City of Heroes, one of the City of Heroes Discord, and what's prompted the introspection was a comment from some a patron who's been paying for some of the hardware that I now have, and I'm like, well, do you really need all of those fans? And my response was, yes, no, maybe. I really don't know. So I kind of set up this morning, since I had the Be Quiet 650 watt power supply that I got in from Black Friday. I would put it in the Silverstone SG10. I would put enough of it back together, and I would go over fan design. And I ran into, as the pictures on the screen demonstrate, why there's actually a break in the electrical cabling interior to the SG10. On the photo on the extreme left-hand side, it's a vertical orientation. We're looking at the old broken RM 750 from Corsair up top, and we can see that the electrical plug is on the bottom of the power supply and mounted in relation. The wide sides of the plug are perpendicular to the vertical sides of the power supply, and the short sides of the plug are perpendicular to the width of the power supply. And the power button is, in this orientation, above, closer positioned towards the middle of the power supply. The Be Quiet power supply, on the other hand, has the long ways sides of the electrical plug uh, perpendicular to the width, and the shorts of the electrical plug perpendicular to the height. So it's mounted 90 degrees from where the Corsair's plug is mounted. And on the Be Quiet, the power plug is below, on the far edge of the power supply. And as in the previous video, as in the middle picture, this means that the SG10 interior electrical cord runs straight over the Be Quiet's power switch. And as we go to the picture that's on the far right hand side, we can see why this orientation on power supplies is problematic. The power, and this is also on the extreme left hand picture as well, with the bottom fan in place, in this orientation on this power supply, the electrical cord runs along the top of the top of the fan chassis, and is pushed out to the side. I did not notice this problem on the Corsair because the Corsair's 90-degree rotation allowed the interior power cord to simply just go over the fan at the bottom, rather than down and into the fan at the bottom of the case. Alright, so what this means, in order to put a power supply in here, I have to make sure that whatever power supply I choose is going to have a rotated electrical plug, and that as long as I have that, the power switch placement really doesn't matter. Okay, so the quick fix here is I just take the Corsair power supply out of the media server, put the Be Quiet power supply into the media server. Problem solved. Okay, that's a short-term solution. I could do that. There are other issues at hand with the SG10, and I had debate about taking more pictures, trying to shoot some video to kind of explain what those are. But one of the primary problems is represented here in these photos. The direction of air that goes through the power supply may not be obvious to somebody who just bought a power supply and is looking at it. I've had power supplies where the fan is used to exhaust air from the power supply. So if we look at the Corsair and the Silverstone that are here, and an exhaust fan, the fan would be pulling air from inside the case and pushing it out through the front of the chassis. And do I have a picture loaded? With a front side of the chassis. Yeah, this picture will do. We'll bring that in and transform, fit the screen. Alright, this is one of the older pictures where we're looking at the Silverstone chassis on the left, and an Anoxia chassis is on the right. An Anoxia chassis, you can see the RM850X all the way at the bottom, and it has a filter below the power supply and a clean air exit to the front. I don't have the power supply fitted into the Silverstone, so we will bring up this picture back to the front, and we'll just leave it where it is. The Silverstone, with the power supply in place, the fan would be right on the front upper hand. You see where the Silverstone badge is in the middle of the chassis? I don't think I can draw in here, can I? Do I have an... No, I don't really have a way to draw cleanly. Okay, so the power supply would be exhaust. If this is an exhaust fan, the power supply would be exhausting out through the front of the Silverstone. If the power supply fan is an intake fan, it's bringing cold air in from the outside through the filter, then it's pushing air into the case, out and above, keyword, above the chassis fans that are aligned at the bottom of the Silverstone SG10 case. And that, I believe, is problematic for thermal exit. Now, theoretically, the huge fan at the top of the SG10 should create a low pressure zone and enable all of the air to be pulled up and out. Theoretically, I sold off my smoke machine to do smoke testing years ago when I was down in Florida. So I never ran a smoke test. When I got this, I just ran a paper test. I put a loose piece of paper over top and looked to see, well, did I have any air pressure? And since I did, I wasn't really concerned about it. But if we saw the more highly detailed pictures from the inside of the, uh, I think this one will do. Transform, fit the screen. As we see, okay, and here's a better shot interior. We can see the top of the power supply chassis interior to the SG10 on the kind of bottom center. That's what that framework is for. And we can see the amount of dirt, dust, and grime that accumulated. Simply having a low pressure area was not enough to keep the interior of the uh, chassis clean. Ignore the dust on the motherboard because that was in one of the PVX Q packs and had been sitting uh, on a shelf for a very long time. And at least it still turns on, so there was that. Uh, so problematic. In order for the SG10 to have proper air movement internal, I calculated that I would actually need to put fans in all of the fan locations to move enough air through the chassis to keep dust and dirt from piling up. That's we can see three fans on um, the bottom bar. There is another 80 millimeter fan underneath the power supply, which goes to the hard drive chambers. And then there's a fan on the backside. And as already detailed in previous videos, some of these fans need to be slim fit fans. And yes, if I had a slim fit fan where that Silverstone fan is fitting, maybe the power supply cable on the Be Quiet wouldn't be such an issue. And since you've got the chassis case over the cable and you can't reach the power button as long as it's on, there's not, it shouldn't be a problem. There's no actual breaks in the cable, so it shouldn't be a problem. So, in theory, if I had a slim fan instead of the fat Silverstone that's in there, I may have enough cable clearance to still use this chassis, perhaps safely, with enough air movement. And then one of the pictures where I don't think I have a good shot of it, and I stopped when I got to the point of, I'm sorry, as I look for the appropriate pictures. As I got to the point where I was looking at this and the cabling, on the other side, there's an 80 millimeter fan underneath. Uh, Actually, let me go double check that. So we'll advantage of a Bluetooth headset. I can just get up and go and look at it. Uh, yes, that is an 80 millimeter fan internal. And my first thought was, well, that fan is meant to push air into the hard drive chassis. And then I had another look at the measurements and another look at the chassis case, and I realized it's not actually designed to put see if I can get a good picture of this real quick and bring them in. Alright. Doing things live. Alright, please don't fuss at me too much for unplugging you. And okay, camera up. Let's get some light, hopefully, on it. Let the screwdrivers hit the floor. Let the screwdrivers hit the floor. Okay. I think I'm almost there. Okay. There we are. Let's get a good shot of you. Alright. There's one with you on. And now we'll take another with the same orientation as with you. And we'll spin this back around. And we'll keep relatively the same orientation. There we go. That's actually 3 pictures. And it should be enough to show us what we want. Transfer. And just in case you're wondering, the phone I am using is the Red Magic 6 Racing. Nubia ZTE did a really good job with this phone, with the camera setup. Have no reservations suggesting it. Alright, so picture 1. Okay, and transform. Flip the screen. Let's do transform, paste transform. Okay. And we'll move you into the center. And transform, paste transform. Alright. And we'll take you to off. Oops. Let's move you over. And let's move you. Okay. This is the 80mm interior fan. Now, as you can see from the picture on the far right now, this fan, if in place, has an exhaust port. So if you're using this as an interior fan, if you're using it to intake air, it does have an intake point, but doesn't actually blow any air into into the chamber that's housing the hard drives. The only air cooling that the hard drives get is from the top of the case. Okay, that picture. Alright, come on, let me select that picture. Okay, it's bring me to the top. In this case, the hard drive chambers only has some air pressure movement caused by the large fan at the top pulling air out of the chamber. That's doesn't really, while this is fine for serial ATA magnetic drives, which comparatively speaking don't get that hot, solid state drives, even over serial ATA, can get significantly warmer. There's not really a good way to cool down the hard drive chamber for solid state drives. There's no air movement, there's no additional heat sinking. It's kind of a just get hot chamber of the computer. Now I could get around that by coming back and covering this vent hole up using and pushing air into the hard drive chambers, but I'm not really sure how well that's going to work. Uh, and then the last picture is this one. And we're going to just turn you guys off, bring you in, and transform, paste transform. Alright, and this is of the chassis of the side with the cover in place, and here we see that the power supply actually does have its own exhaust porting in the upper case. So if it's exhausting air, if it's doing intake on the front and exhausting air outside of the power supply, there is an exit vent. So this again was not really a problem, not something I really thought about the last time that I was really working on this case. But I'm still the air movement inside, the entire air movement looking at the chassis and looking at how much dust was in there. And I need two 92, maybe two 92 or three 80 millimeter fans. I would need at least two 120 millimeter slimline fans for everything to fit with this. The cost of making this system work to cool properly, to get air every place it needs to go, and to upgrade to solid state drives, the cost is just rapidly rising. Uh, I don't really trust the electrical cable anymore that's run interior. Silverstone doesn't list replacement cables on their accessory site. I have not contacted their support yet, so I don't actually know if I can get another cable or if I would have to rewire my own. I'm not even sure that this case is still in production due to COVID supply restrictions. I'm running a, this is going to be a significant challenge to cool, and on top of that, because of the motherboard and processors in here, there's not really a whole lot that I can do with it. Due to the case, I'm pretty much limited to only two solid state drives or two magnetic drives, because that's all there's the room in the hard drive bays to really place. And depending on the graphics card that I wind up getting, I may not have the option to put in a PCIe to solid state drive on the second PCIe 16 graphics card slot. The PCIe 1X slot is definitely not going to be available at all, because even on a dual slot graphics card, it's going to be covered up. So my expansion opportunities are limited aggressively. This is never going to be a monster in throughput. My processor capabilities are likewise going to be limited. Okay, it's an i7-920, but the hyper-threading was never a full thread performance. You had to have very specific workloads to make use of the hyper-threading components. So for the most part, it's really just a 4-core processor for most general-purpose x86 64 applications. It's in 4-core mode. It's not going to put up a very good fight against anything else in the 4-core market. I can pick up an AMD APU for around $270 that will blow this out of the water. And okay, yeah, those AMD APUs are still using Vega graphics, but if I really wanted to go that route, I already have two motherboards technically capable of using those, and I probably have a Wraith Spire cooling fan sitting around here from the last time that somebody I put a processor together for somebody and put a much better cooling solution on top. So the options to do something, the amount of money that it's going to take to make this usable And then I have to focus in on the memory, and we'll look at the memory because we're looking at the memory, right? We can see the slots at the bottom. I now know that this processor is limited to 12 gigabytes triple channel. There is a fair argument to be made that 24 gigabytes dual channel versus 12 gigabytes triple channel, I'm going to get more performance mileage out of the 24 gigs dual channel. But you can't really do 24 gigs dual channel without some kind of, you would have to, as I do the math here, uh, you could you could do yeah, if you do six 4 gig sticks, you could get all the way to 24 gigs. Finding 24 gig single sided DIMMs now for DDR3 is, well, it's possible, but I'm not really sure it's worth it. Is getting to 8 gigabyte dual sided DIMMs is possible, not cost prohibitive, but we're still looking at slower memory performance. Is a novelty item. It's not really getting anything. The Steam Deck's processor performance, despite being very, having specifications that are very close to it, similar, however you want to pronounce it. Every time I say similar, somebody says it's similar or similar. It's almost identical. It's a 4-core, 8-thread. The AMD APU is going to be able to handle more threads more reliably. It's going to have much faster memory. This is the running line of, oh, this is just an oversized, overpowered Steam Deck. No, this probably isn't going to put up much of a processing fight against the Steam Deck across most workloads. And I've already pre-registered for a Steam Deck, and I'd rather really spend the money on a Steam Deck than, well, pushing this to some point. So I've reached a point where if this was going to be very cheap to get back up and running, I'd have been, kind of just like, let's let it roll. But there's so many things going wrong with it, so many things we're now looking at the case after I've been using it for a long time. I don't think it's a good expenditure of money to push this back to usability. Uh, and the Vishira that I have, uh, the Vishira 6300. Yes, I saw the news breaking that somebody got 8 gigahertz out of one, and I'm going, wow, awesome. Kind of wish that had been me, but I'm not doing mineral oil cooling these days. I'm not doing phase change cooling. I'm not doing anything really exotic simply because I don't have the money to replace stuff if something breaks. And another reason why I haven't gone and gotten a smoke machine again to do actual air channel testing. Because if something goes wrong and you smoke out your machine, you leave too much residue, something goes wrong, I don't have the money to fix those. So that's kind of a big concern. Uh, the next question after that came, well, would I be willing to give this away? And the short answer is no. Yes, the frayed wires inside the SG10. I would not. I'm not. I'm not willing to knowingly pass this on to somebody else, even if they know that it has frayed wires inside. Because it doesn't look like an electrical danger. It may be. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else blowing out a power supply. Likewise, the cooling challenges on it. This is a very noisy case. There's not really any padding. Once you get any kind of airflow in it, there's the hard drive chamber is. I'm not sure it has proper cooling for modern day drives. There's really no air movement going through there, so I'm not comfortable passing the SG10 on to somebody else. So I'm probably going to. I may not even keep that Silverstone fan. I'm probably just going to go toss this in a dumpster. The i7 920. Uh, I mean, it's an engineering sample. It's apparently got a hardware limitation on what it actually supports. It's on a not so great motherboard. It's not very performance competitive. The amount of if I'm cringing at the amount of money it's going to take to put this back into usage when I can get a much better system for the same amount of money or probably less, unless somebody already has the infrastructure in place. They've got DDR3 memory on hand, uh, and they're willing to, they're just replacing an older platform where this might be an upgrade. Okay, it may be on the table to go out. I'm just, it's not my first choice. I'm not sure I want to throw it away yet, but I definitely am going to be retiring this, probably putting it in a case. And just if somebody's interested, somebody already has the resources, or if, you know, and then I've been pitching some of these links at some people I do know inside Intel. If Intel says, okay, we do kind of want to see you bring this back to life, we do kind of want to see what this looks like running one of our Arc Alchemist uh, graphics processors, then when we get to that point, if something like that happens, okay, my first preference though would be to take it out of the SG10 chassis and put this in a more modern chassis that I'm not having to fight the chassis to make the platform work. And I think I specified in a previous video, seeing if we still got it up, and I think it was. Alright, we'll bring this up, and we'll do interact, and we will do, let's refresh this. I'm pretty sure I added, there we go. Alright, if I had, if I was doing a case uh, to work this in, I would actually rather do something like the Be Quiet Pure Base 500DX. Because mostly because it does have a USB Type-C slot up front. Okay, I know this motherboard doesn't support USB Type-C output. I know that I don't trust the add-in cards for PCI Express that expose a USB Type-C, but if I go to a more modern motherboard, then I might be able to get a USB Type-C port, um, or something like the, uh, looking through here, the BG06, 036, the 34, the 35. The 38 and the DX are the ones that appear to have the, focusing on the, give me a shot at the top, please. Shot at the top. Okay. So the 3.7 and the 3.8 are the ones that apparently move up to the USB Type-C. So something in the lower chassis uh, don't have the USB Type-C, so not worried about it. But that would be if I was building it, if I was rebuilding this for a new chassis. This is probably the one that I would want because I've used this. I'm on my second. Uh, there was the Dark Base 700 that I built for a patron, and there's my Dark Base 700, which is sitting right next to me. That I really love working with the Dark Base. It's a very good platform to work with. I'm kind of looking at the Pure Base and thinking I'd really like to, work with that one. It looks a lot close. I'm kind of going. I see there's a slide out cart over here. I'm thinking, what is that for? Hard drive bay? Uh, does it actually give me a breakdown on what it's for? Uh, I also know that the Be Quiets, there's a little way the drive bays are mostly constructed. You do have maybe some drive bays that can be mounted on the backside if you wanted to do solid state drives there. Cooling, you can put cooling down at the bottom, and have a fan blowing up. You've got more options to cool the base space on, at least on the Dark Base 700 that I have. And so that's just, if it was my money on the line, if I was trying to uh, run this forward, yeah, I would probably want to do that. I'm looking for an explanation of what that breakout box is for. PSU Shroud. It doesn't really specify here. Uh, do I have an actual link to Be Quiet's page stored? I think this is it. That's the breakout for the image. No. Doing it live. What all do we have then? Okay, I apparently don't have one that's broken out like that. So let's go grab it. That was what this. Yeah, there we are. And we'll go for you. And we'll turn you off. Okay, and now we're looking at, do we have an explanation of what that technical data, Purim base, and dimensions per side, expansion slot, fan mounting locations, dry bay capacity 3.52, 3.5, 2.55. Okay. Can I get a manual to look at? Alright. Look at the data sheet first. Although I may have just broken. Okay. Copy link address. And see what happens. Okay. Those are actually going as downloads. Okay. Why not web pages? Alright. Let's try this then. Okay, here we go. PDF up. Interact. And what are we looking at? Pre-install Pure Wings, optional installation of Pure Wings. Issue exhaust. Okay. It doesn't actually. Gives us the Pure Wings at the top to exhaust air out the top, giving us a zero pressure zone or low pressure zone. Don't have to why I said zero pressure. Uh, doesn't quite give me what I want. Let's check this one. Pure base 500DX. Interact. No, not you. I interact with you. Manual reading. So much fun. Okay, let's see what page I'm looking for first. Okay, exploded descriptions of parts. Okay, affix the motherboard, affix the scene. Okay, that tilt out bracket H SSD panel. Okay, so it's got a solid state panel with its own bracket. G is a solid state bracket that's on the back side of the motherboard. F is the hard drive cage, which goes at the bottom. And uh, so that tilt out cage was apparently the solid state drive bay cage, which looking at it, can I get a zoom in on that? Radiator compatibility. Oh, yes, there we go. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, breakout on the solid state drive bay cage and where it fits in. So the solid state drive bay cage is putting the solid state drives image right here. Our drives would be right in front, right by the upper front fans. So our solid state drives would be being directly cooled by fans placed at the front of the chassis. Okay, that's what I really wanted to look for, was how is the solid state drive going to cool. The backside drives, probably pulling air out of the top. I do know from the Dark Base 700 that there is a good channel of air from the top zones, and there is a mesh front to the sides, so there is air intake that way. I'm not sure we'll be putting in that many. Uh, that does answer. Yeah, this is. I would want to do a. Just looking at the specs, I would want to do a dark base or something like the dark base. If I'm trying to do something with the Intel i7-920, or the dark base would, maybe I could put the Vishira back together if, no one's wanting that, and that at least gets me someplace else in the same direction. Alright, I think that's all I had for you this morning. Why I'm retiring the SG10 and it's probably going into the trash, why I'm retiring the i7-920, and what I would probably be looking at to keep the i7-920 going, and the changes I would be looking to make and what I'm looking for in chassis design. I'm Aurian Archive.